At dinner, Mom raised her glass and announced that she and Dad had given my brother full access to my savings. Derek smiled, opened the banking app, and said, "Tomorrow. Your money closes my deal." Then the screen loaded, balance 0.0. He refreshed it 3 times. Mom demanded an explanation. I placed the revoked power of attorney beside her plate. "You gave him access. You just didn't know I emptied the account first." Dad called me selfish. Derek said I had destroyed his future. Then I slid a second document across the table, a capital contribution letter carrying my signature. The room changed when I said, "The missing money isn't your biggest problem," because I had never signed that letter. Before I explain how my parents got into my account, hit like and tell me where you're listening from. And if your family has ever treated your savings like shared property, share what you did. Your advice reminds me I'm not facing this alone. My name is Vanessa Sutton. I was 38, lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, and owned a company my family still described as the fire alarm business. Northgate Life Safety had 31 employees, 6 service vehicles, and contracts across 2 states. To my parents, that still made me the practical daughter with a steady income. Derek was 4 years younger and far more exciting to them. He had charm, presentation skills, and just enough success in real estate to make every new risk sound like destiny. When he renovated a duplex, Mom called him visionary. When I asked for an $18,000 loan to buy my second service truck, Dad said construction was unstable and women burned out in field work. I offered interest and a repayment schedule. They refused. 2 years later, they gave Derek $55,000 for his first property and called it backing talent. That became the pattern. Derek's risks were investments. My caution was fear. His shortages were emergencies. My savings were available. Once, he borrowed a Northgate truck for a renovation and returned it with a crushed rear panel and water-damaged equipment. The repair cost me $6,700. Mom asked me not to pressure him because his project was already struggling. At my parents' anniversary party, my company supplied the lighting, emergency power, and safety inspection. Mom thanked Derek publicly for choosing the venue. She referred to my team as Vanessa's little alarm crew. None of those moments looked large enough to justify a family war. That was how the entitlement grew. Every favor I absorbed became proof that I could absorb the next one. Dad rarely insulted me directly. He simply stepped aside whenever Mom decided Derek needed something. He called that staying neutral. In practice, it meant Derek always had 2 parents protecting his future, while I was expected to protect my own. I had spent years building stability they treated like excess. They saw my discipline, my savings, and my company as evidence that taking from me would do less damage. What they never understood was that the money in that account already had a purpose, and the document giving them access had been signed during the most vulnerable week of my life. I had simply forgotten that it still existed afterward. I started Northgate Life Safety when I was 27 with 2 technicians, 1 used service van, and a rented office that smelled like drywall dust. We inspected fire alarms in warehouses, apartment buildings, and small medical offices. In the beginning, I did everything. I read plans, met fire marshals, chased late invoices, trained technicians, and answered emergency calls at 2 in the morning. If a system failed inspection, the building could not open. If my team missed something, people could get hurt. That responsibility taught me to plan for problems before they became emergencies. Over the next 11 years, Northgate grew to 31 employees, 6 service vehicles, a design department, and contracts across North Carolina and South Carolina. The company generated revenue, but revenue was not cash I could casually spend. Every month meant payroll, insurance, fuel, training, equipment debt, and customers who paid 60 days late. 5 years before Derek tried to access my savings, a distracted driver hit my car on the interstate. The crash damaged 2 vertebrae and left me facing spinal surgery. At the time, I was unmarried and still the only person authorized to manage several of my financial obligations. My attorney recommended a durable financial power of attorney. I named Mom and Dad. The document allowed either of them to speak with banks, pay bills, and move money between my accounts if I became unable to handle things myself. It was designed to protect me. It did not allow them to give my money away, invest in Derek's business, or hand their authority to someone else. The document took effect immediately because waiting for medical declarations could delay urgent payments. I recovered after 3 months. Mom and Dad never used the authority, and I returned to work. I should have revoked it then. I did not. Years passed, and the paperwork disappeared into the background of my life. Meanwhile, I built a personal savings account to hold $236,000. That money came from taxed salary, company distributions, and the sale of my first townhouse. It was not payroll money or a business reserve, but it was not idle either. I had signed a letter of intent to purchase an 11,000 square foot facility for Northgate. $190,000 would fund the equity contribution. $26,000 would cover closing costs. The rest would support the move and new hires. My family saw only a large balance. They did not see 6 years of delayed plans already attached to every dollar. And while I was preparing to buy a building for 31 employees, Mom used an emergency document from my hospital room to help Derek finance a dream I had never agreed to fund. Derek called his project the Mercer Room. He had found an old textile warehouse near downtown Charlotte and planned to turn it into a private club with co-working offices, an event hall, a cocktail lounge, and studio space for brand launches. The concept was polished. The financing was not. The building cost $1,460,000, closing costs, reserves, and initial work pushed the amount even higher. The private lender required Derek to contribute at least $215,000 of his own capital. He had $29,000. Mom and Dad could provide another $37,000. That still left a gap of nearly $150,000 before working capital. Derek told them refinancing would repay everything within 6 months. He called my savings bridge funding. Mom called it a family opportunity. Dad called it temporary. No one called me. Mom knew about the durable power of attorney from my surgery. She took it to my bank, where the staff verified the document and created an online profile allowing her to act as my financial agent. That authority was supposed to be used for my benefit. Instead, she changed the phone number receiving security codes to one she shared with Dad. Then they gave Derek the username, password, and verification codes. He was not added as an owner. He was simply using Mom's access as though it belonged to him. Derek logged in, saw the $236,000, and added Mercer Room Holdings LLC as an external recipient. He scheduled a transfer for $198,000. Mom later claimed she had approved only $150,000. Derek decided the project also needed furniture, launch marketing, operating reserves, and a company SUV. That was not the only line he crossed. He gave the lender a copy of my bank statement and described me as a passive family investor. When the lender requested a capital contribution letter, Mom signed one as my attorney in fact. The lender still wanted confirmation from me, so Derek edited the PDF. He removed the line showing Mom had signed on my behalf, copied my signature from an old Northgate contract, and sent the letter back as if I had approved the investment myself. Mom and Dad knew he intended to use my money. They did not know he had borrowed my identity too. And before the scheduled transfer could leave my account, his new device introduced itself to my phone. The alert arrived while I was leaving a hospital inspection, and the name beside it made my blood run cold. The first alert said a new trusted device had been added to my financial agent profile. The second said an external account had been linked, Mercer Room Holdings LLC. For 1 second, I stood in the hospital parking garage staring at my phone, hoping the name was a coincidence. It was not. I called the bank before I reached my car. Imani Reed, the branch manager, reviewed the account while I waited on hold. "Your mother activated the power of attorney this morning," she said. An agent profile was created, and someone logged in from a new device. Was my brother added as an owner? No. But the login came through your mother's access. She confirmed that Mercer Room Holdings had been added as an external recipient and that a large transfer was scheduled for review. My hands went cold. "My parents have authority to protect my money," I said. "They do not have authority to give it to my brother." Imani agreed. She froze electronic transfers, disabled the new device, flagged the external account, and sent the file to the bank's financial exploitation team. Then she told me to come in with identification. I called Leah Colson, my attorney, from the parking garage. She did not waste time asking whether I wanted to confront my family first. "Secure the account," she said, "then we talk." By the time I reached the branch, Leah had prepared a revocation of the power of attorney, a fraud affidavit, and a written demand preserving every login, device record, security code change, and scheduled transaction. Imani showed me the transfer amount, $198,000. Not $150, not temporary bridge funding. Nearly every dollar Derek believed he could reach. After the bank verified my identity, I signed a wire order moving the full $236,000 to a new account at another institution. The old account remained open under a fraud hold, so the access history could not disappear. Its balance became zero. Only then did Leah contact Derek's lender. I stated in writing that I was not an investor, had never committed capital, had not authorized use of my statement, and would not guarantee the project. The lender sent us the contribution letter from Derek's file. My name was typed at the bottom, my signature appeared beneath it. It looked real because it had been copied from an old Northgate contract. I had never seen the letter. Leah told me not to call my parents yet. Let the logs be saved. Let the lender preserve the file. Let every false step remain exactly where they had placed it. That evening, Mom texted me, "Dinner tonight. We're celebrating Derek's closing." I printed the revoked power of attorney and the forged letter. Then I drove to my parents' house without telling them their money was already gone. They believed they were about to present me with a finished decision. I was arriving with proof that their decision had never been theirs alone. Dinner was on the table when I arrived. Mom had opened champagne. Derek sat beside Camille with a leather folder in front of him, smiling like the closing had happened. Dad raised his glass. "Tomorrow, the Mercer room becomes real." I sat down quietly. Whose money makes that happen? Mom sighed as if I were starting an argument she had decided was unnecessary. "We gave Derek access to your savings. It is bridge capital." Vanessa. "6 months. Maybe less," Dad added. "You will get your money back with interest." Derek leaned forward. "And equity." "This is not charity. What percentage?" He hesitated. "We have not finalized that yet." "What interest rate?" Mom put down her glass. "This is why we handled the details first. You always find reasons to say no before you understand the opportunity." I looked at Derek, opened the account. His smile returned. He pulled out his phone, logged in, and turned the screen toward me. Then his expression changed. He refreshed the page. Once, twice, a third time. "Balance 0.00. What did you do?" Mom reached for the phone. "Where is the money I placed, the revocation of power of attorney, on the table? You gave him full access to my bank account. You just did not know I had already emptied it." Dad stared at me. "You moved family money." "It was never family money." Derek stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor. "My closing is tomorrow. A deal that requires stolen access to close was never funded. It was a loan. I never agreed to lend you anything. Mom said they had planned to replace every dollar after refinancing." I asked how Derek planned to qualify for refinancing when he could not qualify for the purchase without pretending my savings were his equity. No one answered. Then I placed the bank access log beside the revocation. Mom looked at the scheduled transfer amount. $198,000. She turned to Derek. "We agreed on $150. The project needs working capital," he said. "Furniture, launch expenses, reserves, and the company SUV I asked." Camille looked at him. "What SUV?" Derek ignored her. I tapped the log. "That is what happens when you give someone access to money that was never yours. You do not get to be surprised when he decides how much to take." Dad called me vindictive. He said they acted because I was too cautious to see what Derek was building. I opened the second folder. This is what he was building. I slid the capital contribution letter toward Camille. She read it first. "Vanessa Sutton commits $198,000 to Mercer Room Holdings," she said. Then she looked at the signature. "Is that yours?" "No." Mom leaned closer. "I signed a letter as your attorney in fact." "You did." Derek removed that line. The room went still. I showed them the original version beside the one sent to the lender. My copied signature sat where Mom's agency disclosure had been. Dad looked at Derek. "Did you alter this?" Derek said the lender needed a cleaner document. Camille pushed the paper away. "Did Vanessa ever tell you herself she was investing?" He did not answer. I told them Leah had notified the lender that I was not an investor, guarantor, or source of funds. Derek's face drained. "You called them?" "I corrected a lie using my name. The seller will keep the deposit. You spent $40,000 betting that my no would not matter." Mom said I had destroyed Derek's future. I looked at all three of them. No, I protected mine. Then I picked up the forged letter. "The missing money is no longer your biggest problem." The lender withdrew its term sheet the next morning. Without my money, Derek could not satisfy the equity requirement. Once the lender learned that my bank statement had been used without permission and that the contribution letter carried a copied signature, it refused to rely on any document he submitted. The seller kept most of the $40,000 earnest deposit because Derek had allowed the financing contingency to expire. $18,000 came from him. $22,000 came from a home equity line Mom and Dad had opened. The Mercer room never closed. Derek blamed me first. He left 3 voicemails saying I had destroyed years of work over money I would have recovered after refinancing. I saved the messages and sent them to Leah. I did not argue. A project that could survive only by pretending I had invested was never financially ready. Camille withdrew her designs and asked that her name be removed from every presentation. She did not immediately end her relationship with Derek, but she stopped treating his confidence as proof. The bank documented Mom's misuse of agent access, Dad's role in sharing security codes, and Derek's login through a profile that did not belong to him. Because no money actually left the account, I did not demand dramatic criminal charges. I gave the records to the bank and my attorney and let them follow their procedures. Dad and Mom also had to begin repaying the home equity line themselves. I would not cover the deposit, legal fees, or due diligence bills. They had committed that money after deciding my consent was optional. Their loss was painful, but this time it was not mine to absorb or quietly repair. My revenge was much simpler. No one in my family would ever touch my finances again. Leah became my successor financial agent. Northgate's CFO took responsibility for business continuity. My closest friend became my emergency medical contact. Mom and Dad lost every password, authorization, verification number, and ability to speak with a financial institution on my behalf. Derek could no longer use Northgate's name, vehicles, employees, or financial documents for any project. All future money conversations had to go through Leah in writing. Mom called those boundaries cruel. Dad said he had not known Derek altered the letter. "I believe you," I said. "But you knew I had never agreed. Everything after that began with your decision." He had no answer, for weeks. Relatives repeated Mom's version I had chosen a bank balance over my brother's future. I did not defend myself in the family group chat. I did not post the forged letter or the access log. I simply continued with the plan that money had always belonged to. While Derek searched for someone else to blame, Leah called to confirm that my own closing date had been approved. The money they tried to take was about to build something real. 3 weeks later, I signed the closing documents for Northgate's new 11,000 square foot facility. The money my family called unused became our equity. Closing costs, training space, and room for 7 new technicians. Nothing had been sitting idle. It had been waiting for the future I chose. Derek took a salaried job with a property management company and began repaying my parents' home equity loan. Dad eventually sent me a handwritten letter. "I knew you had not agreed. I believed you would forgive us because you always had before." Mom still insisted her intentions had been good. "Good intentions do not require secret passwords," I told her. Derek's first apology focused on the building he lost. I returned it unread. "When your apology is about the money you tried to take instead of the deal you lost, send another one." We did not become a perfect family again, but they stopped treating my stability as permission. Being the responsible daughter never made my money communal. It only made them confident I would survive their betrayal quietly. They handed my brother the keys to my account. By the time he tried the door, I had already moved everything worth stealing. "Would you have emptied the account too?" Comment below and subscribe for more family betrayal and clean revenge stories.